Ladies and gentlemen, greetings and welcome back to a very special segment of Football Focus with Abhishek Iyer. Why special? Because today we'll talk about the World Cup in Brazil 2014. With me in the studio today are my guests, very special indeed. Vishal Mulchandani, jet set, fresh and off a plane, Rana Kapoor and Karan Natera. Welcome guys to the studio.
Thanks, Abhishek. Thanks a lot.
Right, so let's move straight up to the World Cup. We have a list of 8 groups, gentlemen, if you can just take them out. Starting with Group A, we have Brazil, Croatia, Mexico, Cameroon. Group B, the title holders, Spain. But before we move into this, Ronak, 2 cents on the upcoming World Cup. What are your thoughts? What are your expectations from this one?
You know, Abhi, the World Cup special, especially when we're talking about India and other countries that don't necessarily follow football, because there's this loyal viewership of the World Cup. You have people who don't follow English Premier League, La Liga, but when the World Cup comes around, everyone remembers Maradona, everyone remembers Ronaldo, everyone remembers Zidane. So there's that loyal followership of the World Cup, which I hope isn't affected by the fact that we'll have to wake up at 3 a.m. for games this time around. But that's what it means. FIFA World Cup means a lot of people outside of the usual footballing crowd come and watch. So it's an exciting time.
Karan, where do you normally find yourself watching the World Cup?
Generally, it's at friend's place. We just bunk up together. We get some beers, get our vuvuzelas out last time. But yeah, it's generally at a friend's place. As you said, the timing's a big issue here. Yeah. So you have to generally camp up at home.
Speaking of vuvuzelas, this is actually the trademark of the last World Cup in South Africa. Vishal, what do you think is going to be the smasher point of this 2014 World Cup? Is it going to be the ladies dancing the samba beat on a hot afternoon rather in Brazil? Or
how come he gets the best question?
Well, I'm glad it won't be the vuvuzelas at least this time.
Yeah.
The volume will be from the women who
Right.
would probably be out there and dancing the samba. So I think that's a positive, and that'll add a little bit of color to the whole tournament and bring in an audience.
Right, so we'll move on to the charge sheet. We have with us 8 groups, which are the finalists for this year's World Cup. Ronak, take me through Group A. When you talk about the hosts, Brazil, taking on a rather complicated group, I may say, for Croatia, Mexico and Cameroon. Why complicated? Because, Ronak, Croatia, they are a threat in some ways towards Mexico finishing second, aren't they?
Tricky, I think, only for Croatia and the other 2 teams in that, Abhi. I don't see Brazil having a problem in this good squad. Neymar on fire, winning the Confederations Cup. And I think Felipe Scolari in a World Cup with the Brazilian team for a while should make it. I mean, if there's ever a time that the host would go and really take the tournament from the very beginning, it's Brazil. But yes, Croatia, never rule them out. Mexico have always been, they've been party poopers at World Cups before. I'm not going to go much into Cameroon because they've disappointed in the past. But between Croatia and Mexico, we've got a bit to worry about. Croatia have got an interesting bunch of players that come in, especially a change in management as well. They've got attacking players. They edge out teams, big teams as well. Did well at Euro 2012. I think Croatia is one to watch out for.
What's
I think they'll bump
interesting
Mexico.
about the World Cup every 4 years is that we always have an African team that always pulls over a surprise. Talk about Ghana in the last one. You talk about Senegal back in 2002.
Absolutely.
So, Karan, when you talk about this group, you see Cameroon and Mexico. Agreed, but Mexico, you would arguably bet on paper to defeat a Cameroon side like that. But do you see Cameroon pulling any surprises on Group A over here?
To be honest, not really. Mexico, this is the Mexico side, not exactly this one, but they won the gold at the Olympics. So I do really back Mexico over your Cameroon side here because they've really failed to impress in the past World Cups. They won only 1 game in the past few World Cups. In the last World Cup, they didn't win a single point. So I don't really fancy this side. It's an aging side.
Final verdict on Group A. Vishal, your top 2 for this group.
Brazil and Mexico, surely because they got home advantage in terms of playing in South America. They'll have that support. Croatia are a fantastic team. They got a lot of talent. They've got a lot of individual skill. However, Mexico, for me, will still be second because...
Moving on to Group B, where we have the Spain, who are the World Cup holders at present, and we also have Netherlands, who were the finalists last year in a rather feisty encounter in South Africa. Karan, let's talk about the other 2 first, Chile and Australia. You look at Australia as a side, they are capable of at least making it to the quarters like they have always. Do you see them progressing? I see Ronak has a smile on his face. We'll come to that later, but do you see Australia progressing past the group stages this season?
To be honest, not really. Australia, the bottom ranked, the lowest ranked team coming into the World Cup. Yes, they did have a few good performances the last World Cup, but I don't really fancy them specifically seeing the group in which they're in. I see Chile doing really well. They have players like Sanchez and Vidal. I fail to see Australia winning a game against these teams, let alone qualify. I fail to see them getting a point out of this group.
Right, Ronak, let's discuss the Dutch, the mighty orange as it were. They had a very disappointing Euros now, didn't they? Now, how does a team like Holland, who were always billed as the underdogs, the dark horses, now come strong on the back of a bad Euro and actually do something in Brazil?
I think they need to put Euro behind them. I think the biggest problem with the Netherlands has always been they are perennial underachievers. They were so with Spain in that last World Cup. In fact, it surprised us that Spain and Netherlands made it. It finally was living up to them. I think they just need to manage their players. They've got egos that the size of, well, everything but something other than what Netherlands should have. So I think if you can get the players going well together, you've got a coach in Louis van Gaal who can do that. So you give them a little bit of time, they could surprise. But if I see Australia winning something here, I'd rather stop watching football.
Well, that's a rather strong statement from Rana Kapoor right there. So, Vishal, now tell me about the Spanish side, which arguably has the best squad on paper at the very least. And given that 80% of Barcelona represents Spain in any case. So, how do you see this Spanish side lining up for this World Cup? Because they've got so much quality. Let's start with Juan Mata and Fabregas. Do you see them even getting more than 2 games in this World Cup?
It's going to be very interesting. For one, I feel the Spanish side has changed in a bit. A lot of it depended on Barcelona and the entire structure that they followed with Pep Guardiola. Pep's not there anymore. They don't have that same fluidity in that team. So that's going to transcend to Spain as well. It may not be the same. Secondly, one advantage they would have is Diego Costa, who's now applicable to play for them. Absolutely. I think he's direct, he's strong, and he adds that dimension that Spanish players usually don't have, that directness. Torres was a huge plus for them in the previous years, and I think they rode a bit. They rode a bit on him as well because he had that difference that the rest of the tiki-taka players didn't have.
Costa could get a reception or two when he comes. He chose
he
to play.
He could in Brazil. He definitely
could. In fact, one might assume that Diego Costa is indeed Brazilian, but I think he's chosen to play or represent the Spanish national side, given the strong performances he's been putting in for Atletico Madrid. So Ronak, tell me your top 2 for this group and why.
Spain and Netherlands.
In that order?
Absolutely in that order. No way Netherlands are beating Spain. No way Netherlands are losing to Chile and Australia. Australia should be happy with cricket for now.
Oh, well, interesting point put forward there by Ronak. We'll quickly move to Group C and Group D. We'll start with Group D, and the reason why I jump is because I'm sure a lot of us watching the show right now are big England fans, given the strong influence of the Premier League in our country. So, Karan, I'll start with you. I believe you yourself are an avid English fan, and are they going to finish 4th again, or what's going to happen here?
I write them off. I think Uruguay and Italy are going to go through. I don't see England beating either of the teams in this group. They still haven't solved the midfield problem. I think ever since I started watching football, it's the same question. Gerrard, Lampard, can they play together? Can't they? You've got your Wilsheres and your Cleverleys coming in, but they're not really doing much for you. You have Walcott missing out. Ashley Cole is deteriorating.
Interesting comment made there by Khan when he talks about Gerrard and Lampard again getting mixed up and confused rather on the football field. But I have a question for you, Vishal. Yeah. Will there be a Gerrard-Lampard combination this summer?
I think there would be because Roy Hodgson is in charge and he'll pretty much use an archaic formation and group of players to play, for the team. So there would be, I think there would be a Gerrard, Lampard and probably a Wilshere or maybe another defensive midfielder like Barry if he's chosen. I don't support that.
Okay. Moving on to Italy now. Ronak, talk me through this Italian side. First up, Andre Pirlo. Is he even playing for Italy this World Cup?
The thing with Italy is, I mean, the one time that you should always be fearful of them is when they've had all the nonsense in the world building up to a major tournament. It happened back then when Lippi took them to a World Cup. It came at the back of Juventus going down the match-fixing scandal.
It's pretty much every 4 years.
It's exactly, it works that way. But when Italy have gone through turmoil, for some reason they managed to pull out the best at a World Cup. So I'd put everything else aside. Whether Pirlo plays or not, he's still good enough. I think he's still one of the finest dead ball players that you'll ever find on the football pitch, even today. Whether he's still going to be like that in 3 months' time, I do not know. I do fancy Italy to do well. I see them going through. I see them going through at the expense of Uruguay, and I see England actually topping this group.
Right, Karan. Well, thank you, Ronak, for... That's a very interesting comment that Ronak brings up there when he says England might actually top this group. Well, Ronak, I appreciate that as a gesture towards Karan.
I confirm here that goal line technology will be in play at this World Cup.
Well, yeah, that might actually help England big time this summer. So, there you go. Karan, your pick, your top 2 for Group D to qualify.
Actually, just going on to what Ronak said to Italy with the controversies, it's interesting that one of the main men coming into this is Mario Balotelli, and he... Why always me, Mr. Why always me? But interesting fact is they've never lost when Balotelli has scored, and he's been on hot form recently. So I think that's going to be very interesting. A lot of it is on your main man. England have Wayne Rooney out there, who has to perform for England to go through, otherwise they're nowhere. I'm still going to go with Uruguay. When you see the front, you have Cavani, Suarez and Forlan. They're going to score against all the sides in the group, definitely.
I'd definitely go for Uruguay as the table toppers. My second would probably be England in this case, even though I laugh at them and everyone else does.
Interesting.
They have a way of sneaking through. And I'd love to look at players like Sturridge and Barkley and think they'll do well. However, I think with Roy Hodgson around, they'll just sneak through and it won't really be a very...
Interesting. So England, our pundits today are in fact betting on them making it through. So
Just one pundit, actually. These two seem to be going totally against it.
Well, let's move on to Group C now, where we talk about Colombia. Radamel Falcao, what is he going to do this year?
If he's around, he's got an ACL.
That's right. But I think 3 months, and from what I hear last from the Colombian FA, is that he might just make it to the World Cup. So
I think this is going to be the most boring group of the entire World Cup. If I see a group with Colombia, Greece, Ivory Coast and Japan, I'm not waking up at 1 in the night. I hardly managed to watch the UEFA Champions League at 1 in the night. I hardly managed to watch Chelsea at 6 in the evening. So if I am going to watch a group, it's not going to be this one. If you want the favourites of it, I'd go with Greece because they've always ended up playing on a solid defence, which tends to work in a tournament like this. The Ivory Coast... They've got muscle. They're probably the best African side at major tournaments, so I'm going to go with the two of them. Japan are there to fill the numbers in the Asian quota. Colombia can stay.
Strong statement there by Rana Kapoor. Right. Yeah. Moving on, Karan, let's go to Group E, where we shall talk about Switzerland, Ecuador, France, and Honduras. Let's talk about France. Clearly, they're an England in the making, so to speak, or they've always been the England that England is right now over the last couple of tournaments. How chaotic is it in France right now?
It's just always chaotic with France. I mean, if you see just with their qualifications, after the first match, people like, again, the same old France uses France. When they turned the leg around, there were, quotes in the media just saying respect from the French media. So this is one side which, you can't really say anything about. But if you see the individual talent in that team, they have lots. They have probably more than individual talent in terms of when you discuss in England. You have Ribéry, Benzema, Paul Pogba, you have Giroud. You have a host of individual talent that can turn games around, and sometimes in a group stage you need that. You need that to